American Nacho, how's it going?
Sorry about that. My mic source like changed. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Sorry, I gotta turn your stream off. I got echo now. Sorry about that.
No
All
problem.
right, we're all squared away. Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Well, I don't know, maybe. yesterday, yesterday I went on a tirade against everybody, and then you had told me that I should come by Collins. I don't know if you had some like questions that you wanted to ask me or something.
Not nothing in particular. Just basically, if you wanted to talk to me about anything, one on one, this was the time and place to do it. I would, of course, be able to organize something at any other time. But what was your tirade about?
I was just going off on like both sides. I'm just kind of like fed up with the idea. Like, okay, take for example what just happened a little while ago, like cut sleeves defending like Rob Noah for no reason. Like, I don't understand. Like, just being on a side somehow like makes it to where you have to be okay with like everything else that this side does or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of attitude just like kind of pisses me off about both sides. It's part of the reason why I guess I picked one side or the other in the first place. Because I started off pretty like black pilled. I could really care less, and I didn't think that it was worth it to vote at one point. Like, so yeah, I don't know. It was about a lot of things. Um, I think something that I might have said that I think I remember you disagreed with yesterday was like my take on like why I voted for Trump, because I was like, well, I voted for Trump and then I voted like Democrat down the ticket because I was like, what could he possibly do? You know what I mean? In the worst case scenario, if there was a totally blue like Congress and Senate, and I think you were like, well, I would totally disagree with you.
Yeah, I
I,
totally
I
disagree
think it
with
was
you on
that.
that.
So
Double Chinsey, thanks for the Prime Gaming. Would you like to know why I would disagree with that?
yes.
So the thing is, so I could tell you why I think the Dems should be in power, but I think a better thing would be as to why I think that's not the best way to go about what your goal was. Your goal was to basically stop Trump from doing ridiculous stuff and having to check on each other so that whatever administration's in power doesn't like go too radical, right? Like that's the idea at least.
But also not to like consolidate power too much, like to have just the left in control of the entire system, right? Like that
So
was all
wouldn't
the
it have
goal.
made much
Because I don't
sense?
really
What,
trust the Democrats
so do you
entirely
like
either.
Trump?
No.
So if you don't like Trump and you don't like him for the same reasons I do, his lack of knowledge about general governance, his sporadic behavior, his irrational decision making, the nepotism of his family, like all the reasons that I think the reasons that people don't like Trump. Wouldn't it have
Mhm.
made more sense to vote for Biden on the top of the ticket and vote Republican down ticket? Because then that eliminates the person who is causing the most trouble within the Republican Party, even though I don't like any of the Republican Party. And then you
Um,
put a check on the Democratic executive branch by voting Republican down ticket.
Maybe, but I saw like because I was following so much of what was going on and like who is like leading in all the polls and everything else. Like, I felt like the best option for any Republican to be winning was probably going to be at the top of the ticket and not down ticket. I felt like down ticket was going to be. I felt like the whole thing was going to be a landslide to the left.
Um. So okay. So your idea was that Trump had a much better chance of winning than did the other Republicans.
Right. That's yeah.
Um. Uh. I mean, didn't the polling indicate otherwise?
I mean, maybe. I guess I was following like. I guess the polls suck anyways, but I mean maybe you're right on that. Like I said, I'm not an expert in this stuff. I can't follow every single poll, but um I don't know, man.
Aqua,
That
thanks
was
for the
just
tier
that
one.
was just my thought process for it though. So I don't know if maybe it makes sense to just as
Well,
much sense
if
for you
we
to
both
be
acknowledge
the
that,
other way,
like,
but
what do you think's worse for the country? A Republican president or a Republican legislature? And when
I
we
don't
talk Republican president, we specifically mean Donald Trump.
Yeah, I just don't like the idea. I guess it wasn't really. I mean, it was about Trump and stuff too, like about getting him out of office or like it. So I was for getting him out of office too. Like I just felt kind of like betrayed again by the DNC because I was a Bernie bro in 2016. I was I was down to vote Bernie, and I was a pretty big Bernie supporter, I guess. But uh, the DNC, in my opinion, sabotaged Bernie and put in Hillary instead. And then, but I wasn't following intensely at the time, so maybe I could be misled on that because I think you challenged that also yesterday. But so I could be wrong there, but that's how I felt. So to be fair, this is like a feels based argument or whatever. But and then I
Well,
feel the same way again the second time around because I'm like voting for like Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard, and I feel like these people have a lot more. Uh, I don't know. I feel like they relate a lot better to like people and are a lot more in touch with people, I guess, or that was my opinion of them. And then we saw kind of the same thing happen. Like every other candidate like dropped out, and then here we have Biden, who like nobody, who was like not even on anyone's radar, I don't think.
um,
So
yeah. So I would just put forward the idea that I think Donald Trump is a uniquely destructive individual. When you look at his foreign policy, it is the worst foreign policy out of anybody who could have possibly been president. The only person I could have thought that was any worse would have been if uh, honestly, I would say he's probably worse than even Bush. Because the sporadic nature in which he acts is probably in the way that other world leaders can't predict what he's going to do, means that there's more chances for error and miscommunication and miscalculation on the world stage, putting more places like instances for friction to take place, which can spiral out into conflicts, right? Which I think is
yeah.
like a uniquely destructive compared to everyone else and even the rest of the Republican Party. The only person I could possibly think of maybe would be like a Marjorie Taylor Greene type figure, right? And even her, I would think probably has like better like brain functionality when it comes to issues like that. So I would say that, like, due to that and the fact that Donald Trump was having a uniquely terrible impact on like race relations and his spreading of disinformation during COVID, every major issue this country has to deal with, while I think the Republican Party's overall want to handle it terribly, Trump was uniquely terrible when it came to handling these issues. So that's why I would have if I was in your shoes would have done Republican down ticket, Biden top of ticket.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess it's like I said in the past year or so. I guess I've been diving like more into this stuff and trying and doing a lot more research than I ever did before. Like I always like followed to some degree, like around 2016 ish and before then, but I never felt like it was worth it to really keep up with anything or to even vote. So I never had vote. I didn't vote in 2016, and I didn't vote. I mean, I voted in like a local election, I think once or twice, but that was basically it.
Sure. Okay, one second. Can I show your face on screen? Are you fine with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So now that we've talked about that specifically, would you do you feel comfortable with me moving on to like why I think you shouldn't have voted Republican at all?
Sure, let me hear it.
So my main thing to you is I'll do it this way. What is your main concern about voting Democrat? I know you said like you don't want to give them like unrestrained power, but my main thing I would point to is there was no chance that the Democrats were going to get a 60 majority Senate. We even didn't even think going into it that the Democrats were going to get the Senate. Georgia was a long shot that I went down there personally and others to make happen, and it became a 50-50 with a tie-breaking vote. And Congress was going to be down to the wire anyway. So a concern over like them abusing the system to do the most radical things, I don't understand. And I would even like want to know like what are those radical things you think they would do that are so scary?
So I don't know if it's like, eh, okay, so I didn't like the like packing the court thing that was being pushed, or the idea that like Biden couldn't just come out and say like no that he wouldn't do it. And I I guess at the time too, I didn't fully understand some of the things that were being pushed by that. Like, I didn't understand universal health care. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't really understand like
Yet you
from
supported Bernie.
well, I didn't understand it the way it was presented. Okay, so when it was being presented, uh, the way I understood from a lot of people that I was hearing on the left talk about it was like no and nothing else.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense? So like those kind of things, and I was afraid that if they had the entire legislation, like the entire, the executive branch, everything, the Senate, that they would pack the courts and they would just start shoving through legislation. Like I don't have,
Okay.
to some degree, I respect the Democrats a lot more for like their like they don't care to try things. Like they try things a lot, okay? And but they tend to take like bigger steps than I guess I'm comfortable with sometimes. But it's better than nothing at all. So I have some like respect for that, I guess. So I like the idea of someone else being there to like keep them from taking too big of a step, I guess, if that makes sense.
So my first statement would be that um even if you believe Joe Biden himself was not declaring whether he's for it or against it, he was not showing clear support for it. And with multiple Democrats like Joe Manchin, who are senators who held immense weight, who were showing at the time that no, I'm not going to pack the courts. I'm not in favor of packing the courts. And we kind of all knew that Joe Manchin and others were not going to be in favor of it. I feel that the concern that they were going to pack the courts um doesn't feel like it's a real thing that could occur. And that's on top of the fact that even if there was motivation from every single Democrat to do it, they would have to break the filibuster to do so. And Joe Manchin has declared, and others many a times, to not be in favor of it.
So then I mean I guess I have to admit that maybe I wasn't following the Democrats as closely as I should have been. I mean and I guess so the other reason why I felt like it wasn't really going to be that close too is because a lot of the sources at the time that I was following were more right leaning. Um and so I'm like, well, this is their opinion. This is their take on like what the polls are showing, etc. So I didn't know if I really completely trusted that that was going to be the outcome. You know what I mean? Like I do my best to like layer all my media, but I was just so sick of hearing like everything negative about Trump. I was like, I can find that easily on my own. Like I want some substance. I want to hear like what it's like. All I was hearing from the left was like how bad this person was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't hearing what we're going to do, like a solution to the problem. Is just this is all of our problems, and this is all the problems that are being caused. Like I can see this shit too. Like I want to know how you're going to fix everything, like moving forward, which is, I guess, typical of every political like election or campaign, because that seems to be the norm. Like you just give this general broad statements and not really like a concrete solution or an in-depth solution.
Um, yeah, so I would say that while I do think Biden did propose like plans and stuff, it was not nearly as broad or as much as I would have wanted. But you were just telling me your concerns about like the Democrats going too far. So wouldn't someone like Biden be perfect for you?
I mean, he's not the worst, but also I question his like cognition. Like I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether he's even going to be able to keep. I don't know. Like I don't believe that he's actually 100% there. If I have to be completely honest, and this is like the conspiracy woo meme. It's just the fact that like he released his medical records. He's had 2 brain aneurysms, and the likelihood of you having like significant neurological damage after one is like 60%, and the guy's had 2. Like, and then you can see all the cuts, the super cuts of all of his gaffes. Like, and maybe that's not fair to, but I mean, it seems I don't know. Seems like a legitimate concern
So
without being like mean.
I would I
I don't
would
know.
I would say that you could probably make both Trump and Biden look like they're mentally impaired if you did a snap cuts of all of their worst moments. The thing is, for Biden, it would be him fumbling with words. With Trump's, it would just be him constantly saying things that are just so off base with reality. It would worry you about like his ability to make decisions, not his ability to just basically function. For example, like him like going to like Estonia or Latvia. It was one of the countries in the Baltic states. So I was like, so Civil War was pretty bad, and they're like, Civil War, and he thought that Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were the former Yugoslav states, as in like Southern Europe, or how he called the president of Northern Iraqi Kurdistan Mr. Kurd when he forgot his name, or any other number. And that's just a foreign policy stuff, right? I'm sure you could do that for both of them. So I don't think that, so as much evidence there is for Biden having brain problems, I would say there is as much evidence for Donald Trump having brain problems, because it's really just supercuts. We have no concrete evidence. And let's put the scenario to the test. If Biden was to die, we have a system in place to deal with this. Kamala Harris would become president. If Donald Trump was to die, Mike Pence would become president. Now, I don't know what you think of Mike Pence, but I personally find him to be a very scary figure for his long history, and still committed history, of homophobia, for example, being in favor of like conversion therapy. And I have problems with Kamala Harris. But all the problems I have with Kamala Harris, I have with probably Mike Pence more so, when it comes to policing, for example. There's no position someone could give me on like, well, Kamala Harris's record on policing, that I couldn't turn to Mike Pence and think he would also be in favor of this, but more so.
Yeah, and to be fair, I don't know a whole lot of the history of Mike Pence. I know a lot more about, I guess, Kamala Harris's issues and what I have wrong with her, I guess. But I mean, I honestly, that wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind as the vice president. I mean, I'm not gonna turn this. I don't want this to turn into like me defending Trump, because I mean,
I understand.
I don't fucking like him. That was one of the things that I'm getting so pissed off about, is the fact that's bothering me about Republicans right now, is that he's essentially going to decide who the next candidate to run is going to be.
It's become the Trump party. Did you just see what happened to Liz Cheney? And I'm not a fan of Liz Cheney.
Yeah, and I think that's the stupidest thing. And so let's say, I mean, I don't consider myself a conservative, but if you are a conservative, okay, and you compare the two of them, Liz Cheney is a more conservative politician, like by voting record, so to me, that on its face, it doesn't make sense, because somebody was saying yesterday, like, well, yeah, we have to get rid of like Liz Cheney and somebody else, and I was like, why? And it was just because she voted to impeach Donald Trump. And then there was like a video I was watching with the TRN refugees, and there was a live stream, and they were talking about...
Thank you so much for the tier 3 sub. You're one of the few elite who actually have done tier 3 subs. I deeply appreciate that. It really helps me out.
And the video was essentially saying the same thing. It was like, this person is not a great candidate. They don't represent the Republican Party, and they made all these other broad statements, and then concluded it with, and she's not a Trump supporter. And that was really the only thing. That was the only reason why they were saying that Liz Cheney wasn't the person for the job. Like, I don't know. It just bothers me to see that one whole fucking party is just being like fractured and turned into like, I don't know. If the Republican Party wants to actually be taken seriously, they have to drop Trump. So, I mean, if that's how the Republican Party is going to behave, then I guess I'm fucking independent. Like, I don't have a party then, because I mean, I guess I vote bipartisan anyways. Like, the only other time that I did vote, I voted bipartisan for like some local elections, but so
wouldn't it be useful though to impact the party that actually is still in the realm. And even if you disagree with, like, for example, the people that you think are extreme in the Democratic Party are in the minority. And you know what? I might be one of those people. I am a progressive Democrat. I'm someone you would say who's supportive of, like, the Justice Dems, right? We don't dominate the party. Who dominates the party still? Somewhat moderate type Democrats, right? And don't you think it'd be more useful to be able to vote in primaries when we see how impactful they could be? When we saw the Democratic primary and how much of an impact that had on who ended up being the next president of the United States? Or, for example, when you look at the fact that it seems that Trump's going to be able to have just like the point the finger, the decrepit old finger at who's going to be the next heir to the throne, right? It seems more like a coronation than a actual like primary. Democrats,
Yeah, I mean,
still
I
have
was
that.
arguing with someone yesterday about that. I was like, this is the idea of one person like choosing the candidate for the next election, and one person literally calling them the kingmaker for the next election. Like, if you're a true conservative or and you believe in the conservative values that say like one of the main tenets, I think, is like a strong support of the Constitution, etc., then, I mean, 1776 was to not have fucking monarchs. So why would you be okay with one person being in charge of the entire party? So I don't know. I guess it does make sense, Dylan, but I'm having
it's a hard pill to swallow.
Crisis, okay?
Hard pill to swallow. I mean, the thing is and let's look at the concerns you had. The courts being stuffed is impossible politically right now. It's politically inviable. Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema and other Democrats have made it very clear. Sorry, there's like a fly in my room. Made it very clear that they will not support the destruction of not only like the filibuster, but as well, you're concerned, court stuffing. That's not going to happen. The biggest change we could see is filibuster reform, which I don't see why anybody would be against, because filibuster right now is currently like, you don't have 60 votes, not going to happen, which was not the original point of the filibuster. The original point of the filibuster was for people to go up there, make a huge political statement by talking and talking and talking, and as a delaying tactic. But now it's become something that can basically stop anything from happening. And the Senate already functions as an anti-majoritarian system because the majority is supposed to be Congress. That's supposed to be a representation of the majority of Americans. That's why it's done by population. Where the Senate is supposed to be a representation of the states. And this is supposed to help the states that don't have the same population as, say, California get representation. But putting an anti-majoritarian rule of you need 60 senators to get literally anything outside of budget reconciliation done on top of an already anti-majoritarian system that the founders made is extremely ineffective. And the Democrats are currently not even saying, let's get rid of it. It's just, let's reform it so it's not just going to stop us from doing literally anything.
Okay. So, okay, well, I was trying to touch on something, and then you brought up the filibuster, and
we can move back.
Yeah, sorry, I don't. So something that I agreed with Aiko and Sansol when we were talking yesterday was they were talking about like moving like the Overton window. That's, I mean, when the way they described it to me, I mean, then we're on the same page, because that was something like by, you know, like coining the term like progressive Republican. Like, that's really what I mean is like moving the Republican Party like closer to the center, like moving those who are like willing to listen, like getting them to understand that these ideas or that these are things are going to have to be things that we're going to have to address, like in order to like move forward and evolve, like as a country, as a people. So like stuff like addressing the like police reform and providing like a public option and other things like that. I mean, when they're described by the wrong people, then yeah, I mean, even for me, it was like, okay, well, this is a really stupid idea when it's not described properly or when it's not presented in the right way, then it doesn't make any sense. And I'm someone who's a lot easier to get convince. I would assume, or I think, because I'm pretty fucking center. Like, I'm pretty independent. I've never really trusted one party fully over the other, and I do my best to like try to view both sides of things and not just get caught up in like one set of like ideals or whatever, because at the core of like all of my whatever diving like adventure into the political sphere is the fact that like I'm married with the intention of having kids, and I want to have like the best. I want them to have the best experience growing up and the most opportunities that they can in this country. I want them to have everything that I have plus. So like the idea of moving the party like closer to the center seems is like more comfortable to me than to just give up on the whole party entirely, because I don't know what happens then. So what happens then if all the moderate Republicans and all the center like right people just jump ship and just go to the Democratic Party, and then the Democratic Party has like 80% support among voters, and like
Well,
that?
let
Then
me
what?
what is a better way to show the Republicans that they have to change than declaring to them through your exit, this is no longer a party of working people. This is not the party of Lincoln. This is the party of QAnon and Donald Trump. Therefore, I am leaving. Then the Republican Party looks at their membership rolls and says, holy shit, we're losing members. We're losing elections. We're losing finances. We need to make an adjustment. Because the reason why it's become the party of Donald Trump is because Donald Trump invigorates the base and he rakes in a lot more small dollar donations, right? Once that stops, then what? They have to do something else. They have to change strategy.
Right,
And
but
I would say the thing is, the longer you participate within a party that no longer represents your values, or you don't really see a viable option to pull them in your direction, what's the point of your membership? Do you really think right now you can pull the Republican Party to be the party of, yeah, maybe we should look at universal health care?
I mean, I don't know, man. I'm hoping, but the more and more I see what's happening at the federal level, and I mean, luckily, like, uh, I mean, at my local level, there's somewhat reasonable people in the Republican Party, but I mean, that's a lot further away, and these people are going to have a larger impact. And the people that are behaving this way are the ones getting seen by the rest of Republicans. So this is like trickling down to everyone, and everyone is like, if you're not pro-Trump, then you're not Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it just like I can't really point to anybody on either side though, and this is what pissed me off about both parties to begin with, and why I never really got involved in politics, was because I can't really point to anybody like at the state or above like the federal level as far as politicians and say like this person like really represents me, like this person is like I could really get behind this person because I relate to them so much and this is my person, like and I'm still looking, to be fair, because like
What are your
I try to do.
priorities?
What are my priorities? I mean, really, it comes down to what I said earlier. Like, I really just want to have the best environment, like moving forward. I want us to be in a better position, like geopolitically. Like, I feel like every country in the rest of the world either has like some kind of like disdain for us, and they just work with us because they have to, or they hate us.
Do you think the party of Trump or any party besides Trump would be better at developing a relationship with the rest of the world?
No.
Do you think that like when we look at the Democratic or Republican parties, which party is better at building coalitions with the international community, working in international organizations? What party and its members are better at that?
I mean, the Democratic Party I think
The Democrats were
has
able
a
to get
better
through the
overall
JCPOA.
record, but they've well, and see, that's where I hate to knock them for the mistakes they've made, because like I said, they were willing to try things, you know what I mean? So like, I have to commend their efforts, and I think overall, yeah, they probably have a better track record, or definitely a better history, like a job history, if you were to put it that way. They have more experience, I guess, in this area, and have had pretty significant successes, I guess.
They're more likely, for example, to negotiate with people we have problems with. They're more likely to become members of international agreements, like, for example, the Paris Climate Accords, or stay members of international health organizations like the WHO.
So, do you think that like the idea is to get all the moderates and centrists on the right over to the left, and then let the Republican Party die, and then split the Democratic Party, like?
Well, I don't think the Republican Party is going to
form another party.
I would like the Republican Party to realize that it has slipped into lunacy, and then move back towards reality. And
That's what I want.
But
I want
the
to
question.
try to. I'm trying.
The thing is, I don't think.
Thought process. I was just gonna say, like, my thought process was to try to help it, or see if I could help it from the inside out, I guess. I don't know. Like, by working with, like, I got involved locally here, and I'm in a really red state. And some of the people, at least for my area, are really reasonable people and open to like new ideas and stuff. So that's nice for me, at least locally. But then when it gets further up, like to the state legislators and stuff like that, it's like, it's kind of just towing the line of the Republican Party.
You were a Bernie Sanders voter, right?
Yeah.
Why did you vote for Bernie Sanders?
I liked. Oh man, it's hard to go back and remember all the shit he was saying in 2016. But I mean, I thought I thought he had good intentions. So I went back and tried to do like some like research on like his voting records and stuff, or like who he supported. I saw some things that I didn't like. I think, he's taken money just like every other politician has from like the bigger banks. I think from Chase Bank and from other people like that. And I was like, well, maybe, the guy's like however many years old, and he's had a change of heart, and he really wants to do a positive thing. I looked back at some of his younger like speeches when he was on TV, and even though I'm not really pro-socialist, I felt like there are bits and pieces that could make their way through. You know what I mean? Because I feel like he would probably have a lot of resistance. He wouldn't just be able to implement a bunch of things.
The thing is,
similarly to how I felt this time around about getting Trump in, I was like, well, if we get him in with complete opposition, then he's not just going to be able to turn the whole country into whatever the hell he wants.
So here's a question I have for you. So every priority that Bernie prioritized, right? Is anything that Bernie prioritized, going to be represented by the Republican Party in any way? Even this reformed version you're talking about.
I would hope so.
Like what?
Like if we're talking about like my dream, whatever, reformed Republican Party that drops Trump and everything else.
But let's also work in reality. Like what? Like these.
No, in reality, no. But as it stands right now, no. I don't think any of that stuff would make it through.
And what are those priorities? Let's say I assume you said one of those was healthcare.
Yeah, like
the Republican Party has been the blocker of all major healthcare reform in the United States. That is like if you look at an election, the Democrats run on healthcare, and Obamacare or whatever changes they want to do, the Republicans don't run on it. They run on culture a lot of times. When we talk about the Republican, I'm talking about the party as the manifesto, right? There's individual Republicans who will run on healthcare reform, but the party as in their party doctrine, which they put out in 2016, have yet to update, and they specifically didn't update it for the 2020 election. It's very clear that they don't want to reform healthcare, and if they do, they want to go the other way, as in get rid of Obamacare, as we saw from when Trump was in office. Trump talked about the whole time he was in office, he was going to offer a healthcare plan. He was going to offer a healthcare plan, just like he was going to get his taxes out there. Nothing ever came out. It's because there isn't a Republican healthcare plan. And if there is one, it amounts to getting rid of state lines, which isn't going to fix the major problems we see. So if one of your priorities, which was Bernie's biggest, which was healthcare reform, that only seems physically viable within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and I mean, at the time, at the time, I didn't really know his entire platform, to be honest. But and that's something that's like so I guess I've probably like flipped back and forth on a couple times, because then I looked into like Obamacare and the failures and the money that goes into it and all this, and then I'm like, okay, well, it just seems like a waste of money. Like, we already have health insurance. Like, why don't we look at ways we can like lower the cost on that? And I went through like the righty arc, and then I came back to someone who could explain it better, so my idea of how a public option would work would be something similar to like the U.S. Postal Service, right? So this is an option that everybody's allowed to opt into but also there are going to be other things that exist in tangent
like
to it.
People can keep their private insurance.
Yeah, similarly to like FedEx and Amazon, they still exist and they do package delivery. UPS does, but also the USPS is an option if you need it. Like, you know what I mean?
That is word for word Biden's healthcare plan.
And granted, well, the other thing too that I wouldn't like to see is us increasing the budget for this significantly, because we already spend so much on our healthcare. We already spend more than like every other country does, like percentage wise, on our healthcare, and we get the least out of it. Like,
yeah, I agree with you. But what's
Biden's healthcare plan?
That is literally, Biden was in favor of a public option, which would mean there would be a public option on the market to compete with private options, to help deal with the fact that we have a captive market, but also allow people to have private insurance if they wanted. This was his counterance to Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All. This was a big issue in the Democratic primary, was the idea of Biden versus Bernie, of Bernie is for Medicare for all, Biden's for public option, and he will not accept Medicare for all. And that's something that has been a big issue on the left, is that many people on the left want him to accept Medicare for all, and he never has. Now, once he's gotten in office, he has yet to push this public option. But some would say this is because he's dealing with COVID and all this other stuff, and he'll eventually slide into it, because right now Americans are want these things to be dealt with. But even if we were to say he isn't pushing it right now because he's lazy or he never really cared, he is publicly saying, and the Democrats are publicly saying, that this is our basically party thing right now. He is the executive. He is the representative of the party.
Have adopted this as like.
Well, there are Democrats who want Medicare for all, but the president, who is Joe Biden, this is his healthcare plan, and a lot of Democrats agree with it. Okay. Kamala Harris, for example, backs the same plan. She has also signed on to Medicare for all, but now that she is the vice president, she is now saying, I back a public option. So even if in the scenario where Biden's no longer president, becomes Kamala, that'd be the same healthcare plan.
What was you were trying to interrupt before to ask a question? I
forgot.
Dang it.
Okay. It was going to be about the healthcare plan, so I think I probably just said it.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
If you look up Biden public option, it should be the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
Now, is it the perfect healthcare plan? No. I personally wanted to go further. Other people might think it goes a little bit too far. But it is a lot different than no plan at all, which was Trump's plan, and would presumably be his plan in 2024. Maybe his big
Wait, didn't he
2024
want
campaign promise would be, maybe you'll eventually actually see my healthcare plan this time.
Yeah, I thought right there at the end he was like, I have a plan.
And it will be released. He said it would be released
A
upon
Trump
his
care.
reelection. He said
Yeah,
it would
the
be
Trump
released
care
upon.
plan.
What a bait and switch. Random Tyrant,
Well,
thank you
that
for the Prime Gaming sub. It
well,
feels
the-
like what he used to say about foreign policy when people ask him his foreign policy opinion. He'd say, "Well, I don't want to say it publicly because then the enemies would know it." It seems like but he couldn't pull that for healthcare because I don't want to tell you my healthcare plan or the American people might figure it out. It feels kind of like that. Like if he said
Well,
it, then
and to be fair, both of them were kind of behaving that way near the end, like leading into the election. Like people kept asking when, like I'm pretty sure Biden said that word for word. Like you'll find out what my position is when I get elected, as far as like attacking the Supreme Court. And then the whole deal with like whenever so something else that bothered me too was like whenever the Platinum Plan, Ice Cube went to go meet with like, but he met with like Trump and everybody got all pissed off. So then he came out on like CNN or wherever and was just like, "Look, man, I wanted to meet. I asked to meet with Biden and the Biden team, and they said we'll meet with you whenever we get elected." And Trump's team was just basically like, "Yeah, okay, let's schedule something," and sat down with them. Like, and that's not to like fucking whatever, like defend Trump. I'm just saying like these are things that piss me off about Biden. Like I was watching, I was following both sides. I followed the entire DNC and all the speeches, and like I was like hoping, I was like, do something to fucking convince me like to vote for you because I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to vote this way, but I mean that was my plan. I was like, all right then.
So
I mean to some degree I was kind of set on it, but I was like following the DNC and following all this everything that whenever Biden came out to speak about anything, like hoping to be convinced. I don't know.
This sounds now. The Ice Cube thing feels like a criticism of a campaign strategy that rather than like a criticism of policy, right? Like he's not communicating to people in the right way. Which you want to know what? True. But when it comes to communicating to people in the right way, I'd rather him dodge a meeting with Ice Cube than I'm going to tweet out how COVID's going to be out of here in summer when the looting starts, the shooting starts, and say on stage how Muslims are going to be banned from America.
Trump's campaign fucking sucked. I mean, as soon as he fired, what's his name? Like
Rednecks in chat. Oh boy, we can have him in if he wants to come in.
Yeah, he can come in. I know what he's going to tell me. Okay, he's probably going to be pissed at me. He thinks the world's going to burn. That everything is lost, and he got mad at me yesterday for saying that I don't think that everything is lost, and I think there's still a chance.
Yeah, for being someone with hope.
Yeah. I don't know. That's the other thing that pisses me off. I was starting to see like more people or come across, and it didn't seem like something that was happening that often. I mean, minus because I mean you went to DC too.
Yep,
like,
I was there on January 6th.
Minus being around people like that, you know, you don't really see the whole like those who are on the right necessarily. Those who are like, well, everything is lost, and the only solution moving forward is like some sort of like violent revolution. Like I've seen those people coming out of the woodworks, and I'm like, no, like I want nothing to do with that. That like I'll stay as far away from that as possible. Okay, like there's a lot of fucking issues, but I think we still have plenty of avenues and channels to exhaust and different ways to solve these things through our legal system, through the justice system. Even though I can agree that it needs work. Like I don't think it's all is lost that much. I guess.
Can I ask you a question? What do you think about the idea that the election was stolen?
I just don't know, man. Like, okay, I don't think, based off of everything that's been released and everything that I've seen, I don't think it was stolen. But if you ask me, do I think our elections are secure? I don't really feel that way. Like, but it doesn't have to do with just this election. Like I felt the same way after the 2016 election.
Okay. So we can have a conversation about election security on another day. and voting rights and how it's combined, but you
But specifically the 2016
yeah,
election,
but like the idea that
2020,
2020 that it was stolen, that there was some like conspiracy to like undermine Trump, right? Because I go by what his own cyber like security expert said that he fired afterwards, who said that this was the most secure election of our lifetime. No?
I'll be fair, like being completely honest, like when the frenzy of everything, all the claims were being made, and all the people were bringing everything to court and going through the process of like, you know, Rudy Giuliani's going and saying these little bits in court and bringing all these things up, I was pretty like concerned. I was like, oh shit, like is this a thing that happened?
We had his time in court, didn't
now
he?
that the dust is settled, huh?
He had his time in court, yeah.
Right, yeah, and so now that the dust is settled and everything, then yeah, sure. I mean, it based on the way everything went down, then yeah, no, I don't think the election was stolen.
70% of the Republican Party believes that the election was stolen. Let me if somebody in chat can like source me that, because I've seen that statistic so many times.
I've heard it several times.
That is something that needs a lot more than a few moderates voting. Like, I'm a Cheney Republican, you know? It needs a few more than I'm a Mitt Romney Republican. That is like has developed into a idea that Trump said it, therefore it's true. If somebody goes through all the court cases, if somebody goes through all the claims, if someone looks at Trump's call that he had with the Georgia officials where he was telling them to find the votes, which is a very, in my opinion, a concerning thing for a president to call somebody and then like once they tell you like, no, like there's no problem, like we can't, like it's over, and he just says find 51,000 votes. Like, these are concerning things. The fact that the vast majority of a party took that and just ran with it without any scrutiny is concerning to me. And if you are concerned about the security of our elections, isn't a cult of personality around a man who would just disregard the results of an election? And he said multiple times beforehand during the election campaign that if I lose, it's rigged. He said that on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I was discussing this yesterday, trying to help someone understand, because they were bringing up like latches and the whole like, well, he couldn't file before because of this, there wasn't any standing, etc. Like, he could have actually filed before, but the fact of the matter was that it wasn't just blue states that had changed their voting laws. So it would have been Republicans who were under fire as well if he would have actually filed, saying that changing all these rules previous to the election or leading up into the election were unconstitutional, etc. Like, also Republicans would have been under fire as well.
And these where there was getting pressure was just the states he lost. It wasn't across the board. Right,
and leading into an election, like, the last thing you want to do is lose more of your party support going into it. So he can't say like, well, the election is going to be like, I want the challenge now or whatever before the election. But if he chooses to make the claim after the election, it's like a win-win.
Yeah, but that you do see how that can undermine the sanctity and security of our elections. Yeah. If we look at what happened on January 6th, which I was present for, I live in the Metro DC area, and I went there in a Biden hoodie, which that might have not been the smartest move on my part to go to the Capitol on January 6th in a Biden hoodie. I got some people spit at me. I was called an F slur. I was threatened with execution. Your normal, Friday afternoon stroll type of activities.
Yeah, just the average stroll.
The average stroll through DC. The people were there to stop the steal. That's where people mobilize for. The people who stormed the Capitol believe they were stopping the steal, right? And if my main concern is about sanctity and security of American democracy, right, which you have shown concerns about, a party which has developed a cult of personality around a man to the point where if he says an election was stolen, over 70% of the voters will just buy it in your party. And that leads to real concerns because down the line, and this actually people forget, when Raphael Warnock and Ossoff won, Trump said afterwards that there was widespread voter fraud. Anytime he said when he lost in Iowa to Ted Cruz that there was cheating, he made that claim about Ben Carson on the campaign trail. That is a real concern, that if a party, democracy only works if both parties involved accept the winner. If one of those parties stops to accept the winner, democracy ceases to function. And you know what? In 2016, there was a lot of angry Democrats. I was angry. A lot of people were very angry about Trump winning. And Hillary at first, tried to challenge one area, but dropped it. Called him, congratulated Trump, accepted the results. Later, after the fact, she'll say stuff like about Russia collusion and all this other stuff, but she never went through all these court cases and never went on this campaign to just completely undermined the sanctity of the elections through claims of widespread voter fraud. The most she ever claimed was the idea that the Russians colluded with people on the Trump campaign to win, for Trump to win, which, while many of the claims may have not panned out completely, there were multiple indictments, and we do know there is a reality around multiple unreleased released now CIA reports saying the Republicans did try to influence the election. And I don't think these two things are comparable. When we look at the disinformation campaign, the idea that all these votes were millions of dead people voting, or what about the time when Trump won in 2016, but then claimed millions of illegals voted just because he didn't win the popular vote? This is a consistent pattern of behavior now for the Republican Party to just, when they lose, claim it was rigged or it was voter fraud or anything. How does democracy function in that manner?
Yeah, and that was something. There was something else that I found out during the whole trial as well. During the whole Trump bringing all that stuff. While all that stuff was happening with the voter fraud and then bringing that stuff up in court, I found out about Reality Winner and that whole deal. I don't know how much you know about that.
I'm unaware. If you want to inform me, you can.
I'm plenty aware, so I can act as a check here, I guess. But please go ahead.
Yes. So basically, if you can summarize it better, because I'm still digging on this one on the side. But so Reality Winner was an NSA whistleblower, I guess, but she was a lower level NSA worker who found all of these. I don't know. I guess it was contacts back and forth between Russia and the U.S. government, U.S. government officials, and I don't know if it was. I think it was Republicans, and she was the one who leaked. Who was one of the first ones that leaked that there was some kind of Russian involvement, essentially, in the 2016 election, and she's still in jail now.
Not necessarily one of the first ones to leak, because the investigation had already begun. But Reality Winner is somebody who found she was an NSA analyst. She was a private contractor working down in Georgia. She's prior Air Force. She later returned to NSA to work as a private contractor. She did find, shoot, I might have messed up already. Okay, listen. She went to the press. She took classified materials and went to the press to try to establish that. I think Reality Winner was trying to establish that the election was illegitimate by handing classified material that established a link between that basically established Russian cyber interference in the election, or Russian psyops campaigns or something like that. That's basically what it was, in an attempt to interfere in our election.
Yeah. And under Trump, they jailed her, and she still sits in jail.
I think she gets out this year or next year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know how long her sentence was, but this is something else that was really concerning to me, knowing that was going on, finding out about that during hearing about all this election fraud and during the trials going on and everybody, the court cases and stuff, and I was just like, I'm just gonna wait, man.
So, do you think I personally, this is something that I thought was very convincing to me, like the idea that if you're concerned about election security, strength of our democracy, that like right now, it's hard to argue that the Republican Party is really fighting for that when every time like they're passing legislation which sometimes is found unconstitutional, like in North Carolina with the voter ID laws, something like that. When anytime they lose, there's like this big hubbub about widespread voter fraud, which the like proof doesn't really come forward, or that it was rigged, or Dominion voting machines, or any of this that would end up being pushed. People who which are becoming mainstream Republican politicians. So this is something that concerns me when it comes to the security and strength of our elections. Is if one party can't accept the results, then democracy literally ceases to function.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty fair concern to have, I guess. I mean, yeah, that's why I was ranting yesterday though, because I'm tired of seeing. I guess being the 30%, being the whoever the hell doesn't believe it, and being the people, one of the people who doesn't want Trump to be the kingmaker, or doesn't want to be Trump to be the option moving forward, or for the Republican Party to be like the party of Trump. So I don't know. It's been a build up leading into this.
I don't like Mitt Romney. I don't. But I would much rather it be the party of Romney again than the party of Trump.
Yeah, which is that's basically what I want, or that I think that I could help with, or thought that I could help with. I don't know. The more stuff I see, the more, like when I see Liz Cheney getting dropped for not being a Trumper, like that doesn't give me very much faith.
What about Mitt Romney getting booed at the
Party.
recent Utah convention just because he voted for impeachment? Just because he wasn't a Trumper.
There were others too. Wasn't like Mike Pence also booed? And yeah, no, there were others too.
Sorry, I want to make it clear that the reason that Reality Winner was sent to jail is because she unlawfully removed classified materials from classified spaces and sent them to the press. So it had nothing to do with I don't know if you were worried about it being a conspiracy thing, or I don't know. Like you mentioned that she still sits in jail today.
Yeah, I don't want to frame it the wrong way. No,
okay.
Sorry if that's what I did.
Okay, I just want to make it clear that that's what she's in jail for.
Yeah, she took classified data off of U.S. government servers and then just basically leaked them to the press.
Right.
Well, what do you think I made some decent points, Nacho? At least points to consider. I'm not looking to like make you a lefty definitely. Tonight. I'm just giving you some.
No, I know.
Just some thoughts. That's all.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I got it. Now I have a window of links opened up for me to go read. So
Redneck is saying I can have you.
He's mad at me.
We'll talk to him next, okay, Supreme?
Oh boy.
Love you, Redneck. All right, well, if that's all you got for me, then yeah, I'll let you go, man. I don't want to hog up all the time.
No problem. I like talking to you, and we'll organize another hippy dippy to have you on, okay?
Yes, sir. Sounds good.
No problem.
Thanks for having me.
People can find you at twitch.tv/American Nacho, correct?
Yes, they can.
Wonderful. I hope everybody goes out and supports you.
Thanks, man.
You have a blessed one.
You too.
Wasn't that lovely?